First of all, your reaction to this when you saw it, and what steps you took as Article 19 to get to the truth.
Yeah, I think it's of course worrying and concerning, and it sort of contradicts this narrative that maybe the government administration has been trying to say, that the force is necessary, it's legitimate. When you go to people's houses, there's not even a protest that is going on, and then you want to remove those people and attack them with no reason, then it casts doubt on your narrative that you're basically exercising the powers within the legal limits. And I think it's important right off to say, even in a protest, there's no situation where, first of all, the use of firearms is allowed, right? Which is what
On what standards? Just educate us.
Okay. I think we can start with there's what we call the International Civil Political Rights, which is the covenant sort of at the UN level, which provides for the right to peaceful assembly, Article 21. And then within that, there are guidelines that have been developed at the UN level on the use of firearms. And it has a specific reference to use of firearms in the context of assemblies, because it's an issue that is concerning.
Yes.
We have at the African Union level, we have what we call the African Commission, and we have specific guidelines on policing of the right to assembly. Then at our own level, we have the National Police Service Act, which has what we call the sixth schedule. It basically gives conditions of use of force. And in all those circumstances, the only time you're allowed to use force, not firearms, use of force is when you're protecting life. But then the use of firearms should be in exceptional, very exceptional circumstances, if ever.
And the threshold was not met in your view?
In my view, we are not yet there. I don't know why, but it's a trend we've seen. For Kenya, we start with tear gas, and then the next best thing is automatically police are using firearms. And you wonder there's no other mechanism that you can explore before you get to the use of firearms. Yeah. And then you also have the legal standard, which is basically lawfulness. We've said in law it's prohibited. Then we talk about proportionate force. What threat is being posed against you so that you can justify the use of a firearm? And then we have the issue of, is it necessary? Again, the threat versus your capacity to control that threat. And then now we have the issues of the procedure that you follow once you use force. It's supposed to be reported, it's supposed to be, and actually police themselves are obligated, even locally at the National Police Service Act, they're obligated to report to their commanders and to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Whenever you use force that results in injury or death, you're supposed to report it. And then you're supposed to secure the scene, and IPOA should now come and investigate, which is, I guess, aspirational, because that is not what we see in our context. People are shot and they're left there. Nobody's getting, like last week you saw it had to be the media, right? Even in Mathare, there was Jacaranda, where it was the media personnel who had to call medical personnel so that they could save the lives of those people. You could see women crying, trying to bring out somebody who was injured and trying to plead with the police to allow them to seek medical assistance
homes tear gas, babies, you know,
overwhelmed
by it.
Yeah, so basically the willingness of Kenyan police to just resort to the most extreme measure is of concern. Not even going to the issue of now accountability, I guess we'll get to that later. But even more concerning now is where we see people being pulled out of their houses. They're not even in the middle of a protest, right? They're not doing anything wrong. Why are you going for them?
They know the words used they are using as a hideout. They've seen protesters run into a house, so they come and extract you.
But then even in those circumstances, force, if you legitimately suspect that person, then take them through the legal process, arrest them, propose a charge, let the DPP determine whether there's enough evidence to support whatever allegation it is. And protesting in itself or planning a protest is not a criminal offense in any circumstance. It's a right within the Constitution, within all these legal frameworks. Okay. So it cannot be the sole basis. You must demonstrate what crime you're saying they have committed, so that you can legitimately charge them. So,
Okay.
but it can never be in any circumstances that you're going to deal with them through beatings or shootings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From where you sit, there was the terminology used as genocide. In fact, it was written as Luoland genocide. In your view, does that meet what happened, meet the threshold? And it's not even to try and water down what happened, but also answer this question. Did you see a choreographed attack or use of force in these areas? Because it's not just one person who was shot. It seemed like the message was being sent out. What's your response to that?
Well, my response, first of all, is this has happened before. This happened in 2017 in the same area, Nyalenda area, where baby Pendo ended up, a 6-month-old baby ended up being clobbered in the head and dying. It happened in 2007, and unfortunately it's happening again. And I usually feel like there is a profiling of people from certain areas where, in fact, police who do these operations are not even from that area. They are brought from the neighboring counties. The use of force and firearms under the UN basic principles is clear. The policing of protests is supposed to be done in a humane manner, unless the people are being attacked.
Yes.
And even under our law, you cannot use lethal force when dealing with someone stealing property. It must be a threat to your own life as an officer or the life of another person, right? And so it is a very worrying trend. My message, especially to commanding officers, is that sometimes the arc of justice might be long, but it usually bends in the right direction. And for example, there are 6 senior officers who are facing charges for the death of baby Pendo, and they're being charged under the Rome Statute, right? Crimes against humanity. And so even in this situation, it does not really rise to the level of genocide, but it could be crimes against humanity.
Right.
Because genocide is when you deliberately try to harm or remove a whole or a part of a protected group. So it could be a tribe, or a religion, for example. And so that is not what we are seeing right now, but it is very serious.
Yes.
And really, the IPOA should pull up its socks and really ensure that there's individual and command responsibility. In the case, baby Pendo case, IPOA is the one that did the investigations and worked very closely with the DPP, so that even though it took 5 years, there are people now in their defense for that senseless killing. And we need to ensure that we move away from that regime policing. When we were colonized and when the police was created, it was created to protect the crown, right? And so when we got independence, we expected that we would reorient the police to protect the people.
Yes.
But what happened very quickly is that the police were then created as the protectors of the regime. And anyone who threatens the regime gets the brunt of the police force.
Yes.
And after what we saw in 2007, and when we were now coming up with a new constitution, it was clear that now we want a police service that protects everyone, that is that is professional, that is accountable, and that is human rights compliant. That is why during the first, when we were choosing the first Inspector General, there was an open process of recruitment. Then we also created the IPOA, a civilian-led organization to investigate police. Still, under the Inspector General, we have the Internal Affairs Unit. And then we have a National Police Service Commission that is supposed to deal with HR issues. Slowly and slowly, we are seeing an erosion of all these police reforms. And who will suffer? Everyone will suffer.
And we've seen it.
The people who were part of the people who gave us the Security Laws Amendment Act and so on and so forth are suffering under the same laws. We saw the president sadly complaining, but perhaps we have people who fed the dragon, of Fred the Monster.
Right.
Yeah, and the monster is now coming for them. And even the people who are in charge right now, we never know what happens in the future. So we need to go back to ask ourselves, why did we spend these billions to reform the police?
Yeah.
It's for all of us.
The one word I know now being used commonly on the streets, kitawaramba, because, as you say, power is transient. Whoever's in power today, someone else will be in power tomorrow. And there's revisiting, and people never forgetting. They will revisit, and unfortunately, they might even be, be very vindictive to return the favor that was put to them. But when I posted this saying that you guys are coming on the show and we're about to talk about this, there's someone who actually tweeted in the interest, or rather in the argument for the police. And I want you both to respond to this. Stanley Hiramugo says, policemen are humans who encourage their, police are humans. Kenyans who encourage their brutality deserve nothing better. Obey orders, don't pelt them with stones. How many Kenyan encountered their brutality on Saturday and Sunday that you know of? Basically speaking to, they are humans, and when you say what justifies use of firearms, what if their lives are in danger? And by the way, this episode is in no way to put a blanket condemnation on the police officers. There are very good servicemen out there and that do a fabulous job. But there are instances now that just waters down, or muddies all the good efforts and the good officers that are there. What do you say to someone who holds the argument, police are also human and they're protecting themselves in the line of duty?
Yeah. I think one point to emphasize on the basis upon which you can use force.
Yeah.
For a long time, we've had destruction of property and securing somebody who's committed a felony. It was only until December last year that it was limited under Kenyan laws, at least at the international level. It's always been protection of life. But now we've had a court decision that has reduced it to just protection of life when you're in danger. But then I think we acknowledge, even part of this police reform process all along has been two-sided. We are talking about your conduct that is unbecoming, but we are also talking about your welfare. Yeah. Because you're human beings, we understand you're working in these conditions, you have all this pressure. We have also now in the recent past dealt with a lot of mental health issues amongst our forces. So we are not blind, and we are not assuming or pretending that those are not issues that any one of us, no matter where you work, you want them to be addressed, and more so when you're dealing with people who have such power and such weapons. You want them to be in the best state of mind, in the best work environment, so they can also make reasonable decisions. So it's not something that we ignore. I think we've been criticized in the sector because we always come out to condemn force and every other thing, and people do not necessarily see that side of trying to push for the welfare of these officers. But it is to say that we want to see restraint. We don't want to see that excitement trigger happiness, right? Conduct yourself with professionalism, right? Demonstrate the willingness to protect people, to protect human rights, and just also move away from this thing of saying orders from above all the time, or I've been ordered. Exercise your own judgment in situations. There are mechanisms you can try and de-escalate. I think we've witnessed, there are a couple, if you look at, I like to call it BTS, because the highlight of all this is the bad things, but behind the scenes you'll also come across certain videos of police officers trying to talk to protesters, trying to address wananchi in a very calm way, in a very de-escalate. Usually even when we talk about the right to protest and the policing of assemblies, one of the things we say is de-escalate the situation. And there are actually other jurisdictions where they have a specific force that is trained for de-escalation tactics, right? So that you try and have, before we get to the point where we are throwing stones or tear gas is being exchanged back and forth, we have tried, we are humans, we are all Kenyans. These issues that people are raising legitimately, even when you talk to police officers, sometimes they say, even I feel the pinch, but I have orders, that's what it comes. But we can understand ourselves, we can understand each other better on the very basis that we are humans. So just that demonstration of a willingness, good faith on both sides. If you come with force, then even the protesters are not willing to engage with you. It's a two-way, but we are also not giving protesters the blanket, you know. It's the same way you said, the same way, even you, when you have a right, you also exercise it with responsibility.
Yeah.
So the throwing of stones at police officers is absolutely...
Or looting of property.
Yeah, it's uncalled for, and...
Because there are elements that take advantage of the whole
of the
confusion
whole
and then,
situation, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a two-way street, sort of, with
Yeah.
two sides on both ends. You have a right, exercise it responsibly. You're a police officer, you have an obligation to maintain public order, but you're also obligated to protect life, to respect people's fundamental rights. Yeah.